So good morning, we'll get started. I'm glad to see you showed up. This is a good thing, right? Everybody here is ready to get into sports, right? Yes. No, let's be emphatic. Everybody's here ready to get into sports, right? Yes. Okay, that sounds much better. That's the way you have to go after it. I'd like to introduce some of our people here. First of all is JB.
Yes.
James Bryant. He is the Senior Manager of Sales Development with the Colorado Rapids. And he grows and develops a sales team. And his program must be working. And it must be working well because he's had 100% placement of inside sales reps. And all those he's hired since 2016. That's a really good job. It's very unusual and a very good job. Proud of you.
Touching with that. Everybody's touching.
Yeah, I hope I didn't jinx him now. Kenny Dow. Kenny has a real interesting marketing background. He was an assistant cheerleading coach and later a head cheerleading coach, and he now has a dual role with 2 teams. So while most of you are trying to get into one sport, he's working full-time with 2 sports, right? So he's the head cheer and dance coach at the University of Washington, and he's also the senior director of marketing for the Champions Seattle Storm, right? So he works, what did you say, in the morning to 11 at night?
Like 7 to 11.
7 to 11. So while some of you are looking for a 9-to-5 job, you probably won't have it. He has stretched his beyond 9 to 5, definitely. Dan Ferguson. Dan started his career right here in Seattle with the Seattle Storm. He worked very hard. I had the honor of knowing him when I was consulting with the Storm. He was recognized nationally by the league for being in the top 10 in group sales for 2 consecutive years. His career has taken him across the country to both college and minor league teams in various roles. He's been a director, an assistant GM, and the latest being the GM for the Walla Walla Sweets. And he's working to now develop the next sports sales team. Danny Tetzloff. He's the GM of the Everett Aqua Sox, and he has an illustrious career in minor league baseball. He achieved the 2006 Pioneer League Executive of the Year award. And interestingly enough, not everybody's career begins in sports. His career didn't begin with baseball. He spent 5 years as a sales manager for the Detroit Diesel, and then he joined baseball afterwards. Jeff Yoakum, and Jeff graduated college. He had visions of working Wall Street and big business, and instead he found his way into hospitality consulting. And I thought it was really great. His statement was he toured the world, and it was the greatest cocktail party job, which sounds awesome. But he found it a dead end with no growth. So he started as a recruiter for Robert Half International, and he learned the downside of publicly traded companies. He wanted something a little more inspiring. So he sent a resume to GameFace when they were looking for someone, and not everyone gets the job they want right away. He actually got rejected, and he framed the letter of rejection. And I think that's your motivation, right?
Yes.
And he pursued and pursued and persisted, and he ended up working for them. It paid off. He led their executive search division there, and he stayed 11 years, only leaving to start his own search for a marquee search. So being rejected is a good thing because it gives you the ammunition and the fire to be persistent, right? So we're all looking to get into sports. You're probably wondering who I am. I'm Kathy Burrows. I had sold out seating, and I work with teams across the country. I started in sports with Cleveland Indians, and while most of you are trying hard to get into sports, I was trying hard to stay out of them. I was a nurse, had no desire to be a sports person, never sold anything in my life. They started a volunteer sales club, asked me if I'd come aboard. I said, nah, I don't think so. They said, oh, come to the meeting. We're going to have tasty beverages and we're going to have food. And I'm like, okay, I'll go. So I went, had tasty beverages and food. Vice President saddles up next to me and he says, so what do you think? And I said, I don't think it's for me. And he said, you're right. I didn't think you could do it. You don't tell Kathy Burrows she cannot do anything. So it's like, all right, if you tell me I can't do it, buddy, I will show you. So I joined them as a volunteer salesperson. First sale, 5,000 tickets. I thought, how hard is this? Waited for my second sale and realized, okay, this is hard. I need to have a plan and I need to figure out what I'm doing. So that started my sports career. They asked me to come aboard full-time for about 3 years, 4 years. I kept saying no, and then in a weak moment I finally said yes, and that started my career. I was with them about 8 years and left to start sold out seating. So we're going to talk about your sports career. And I know you want to get into it, and everybody will tell you something different. A lot of your college professors will tell you, you know, here's how you do a resume, here's how you interview it. Sports is a different breed, wouldn't you guys agree? It's not the typical way that you get into a job. So the first question I want to ask, and feel free to answer, is who should I apply for? How do I select? There's a lot of teams out there. Everybody's asking for people. And I know I personally get a lot of emails from you guys, and they will say to me, oh, but, you know, a winning team right away, right? Houston Astros has an opening. I want to go with them. They just won. Or this team just won. I want to go with them. Is this giving you the best career start? Your first job, would you not agree, is the most important job you're going to have. It's going to make or break you. So how do you decide where you're going? Who wants to start?
I'll keep going. I think probably we have several people who apply for several jobs. I've kind of seen sort of the good, bad, and the ugly. Prior to the Colorado Rapids, I was with the New York Yankees for several years, and obviously kind of going to that point, Kathy, of a big brand and exciting, and working in New York. There has been one quote that I always, and I'm sure the panel would agree that you go work for people, not logos. And I think no one has ever made their career by the logo that they have specifically just been with. It's about the people. It's about the people that have your best intentions to help you with your career. And I couldn't agree with you more, Kathy, in regards to this job. And you only can start your sports sales career once. And it's about finding people who have a genuine interest in your development as a professional in our industry, but also personally as well. So I think if you focus, and really the only thing that you guys should be really considering when looking for that first career is not that logo and not where necessarily it's geographically located. It's about how do you connect with that first manager, and does that individual have your best interest at heart to really make sure that you're moving within this career.
I guess I would add to that the fact that we're talking about the logo and the larger organizations. I mean, it's a big splash going with if you're here locally with the Mariners or the Seahawks or some of these larger organizations. Are you really going to be able to have the opportunities to be able to move around and try different things if you're with a larger organization? Sometimes by going with a smaller organization, you're going to be able to see and test yourself in different areas and be able to be involved in different projects as that's going along. And you might surprise yourself and think, gosh, I really didn't see myself in this role over here, but that's actually where I'm finding the most enjoyment and passion by working in this area, and now all of a sudden that's really where I want to go.
Speaking of people, try to find the history of the club. Do they have a reputation for populating the industry with really good people? You think about like Cleveland, there's organizations that have trees. They have systems where they really develop people. They're known for developing people, and not only developing people internally and promoting from within, but promoting them to other organizations. So they can talk about, here's our tree. We're going to get stuck at some point. We're not always going to be able to be promoted into the next job. So are our managers people that just say, no, I'm going to push you down, or I'm going to actually tell my peers group out there that they're all friends with different kinds of people, and they're going to know, I don't want to send you there. You're not going to really succeed. I want to send you here, because you're going to succeed here. I know that person. They're great. They're like us. They develop people really well. They're strong leaders. And so I think that's the tree, the system, if you will, is a really, that's hard though, because at an entry level, and I don't want to sidebar, but how do you identify those kinds of teams early on if you don't know, if you don't have the contacts? Hopefully conferences like this, maybe see guys like JB, that people would show up here that are going to give time to people that they didn't have to come up here. So like those are things that you have to tune into, and you got to pay really attention and kind of read the tea leaves a little bit in this industry.
Going along that same line, and I didn't have this on the question, so I'm going to throw one at you. Getting out of your comfort zone. So many times I hear a person say, I only want to work for my hometown team. I only want to go within an hour because I want to be able to go home to be around my family. Getting out of your comfort zone is huge in sports. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I'll jump in on that one real quick. I'll jump in on that. I'm not your typical college grad that got into sports right away. I had a crazy midlife crisis, and I was in my 30s when I got into baseball. And And I left North Carolina, where I was very comfortable with a company car, a great job, and with Detroit Diesel, it covered 2 states, making great money, and played a lot of free golf. And wanted to get into baseball, just didn't. I always looked at all these sayings and say, don't look back, you only live once and all that good stuff. I didn't want to look back when I was the age I am now and say I never did it. So I did leave my comfort zone. I took a job with a small team in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming, and it was a smaller operation. I can speak specifically for baseball. You can, when you're picking out teams, if you want to work in baseball, in the minor leagues, there's AAA, AA, Single A, and Low A, and summer collegiate baseball as well. And it's not really the level you go to work at in baseball that is where you'll get the most experience. Or AAA, there's poorly run AAA teams, and there's great AAA teams. There's poorly run Single A teams, and there's great Single A teams. So it's not really the level you go to work at. It's you got to kind of look in the mirror and say, what do you want? And if you want to wear a lot of hats and learn a lot of things, sometimes it's better, if you go to a smaller staff that has a staff of 7 or 8 people. But if you're big in a structure and you want to, focus on just ticket sales, then you go with a bigger operation that has a staff of 35, 40. And I've worked at both levels, and so if you want to get some more insight into that, I'd be glad to tell you. I've worked with the good operators, and I've worked with the bad ones. So before I joined the Aqua Sox, during the interview process, I asked them how they were financially so I can pay bills, because it's no fun when you're trying to write a check to the bus company and you don't have any money in the checking account, or you're trying to pay your staff and you're like, we don't have any money. You call your owner and he says, figure it out. So that's no fun. So again, look at that as well. People, if you are getting into whatever industry you try to go into in sports, look at the team as well, just to see if it's a good operator or a poor operator.
Kenny, what were you saying?
Yeah, don't be afraid to take that job in a smaller market, like at a small FCS Division II, Division III school in the college realm, or minor league, because you're going to be able to develop your skill set a lot more there in your first couple of years in your career than you would maybe at like the Yankees or at the Seahawks. For example, I started my career as an assistant marketing director at the University of Montana. And when I was there, we didn't have like a web team or a design team or a video team. So I just taught myself all of those skills. And so by the time that I was able to go for my next job, I was able to prove that like I can do graphic design, I can go shoot video, I can edit video. It was right when social was starting, but you're like, I can do social and all that stuff. And so you develop your skill set. Now you're a very marketable person. With a skill set, and now most organizations are looking for utility players where they can fit anywhere. So like at the Storm, if you're going to work for us in the marketing department, you have to be able to do multiple, you have to have a large skill set to be able to come work with us. For a small organization, we can't have someone who's just capable of doing one thing. They got to be capable of doing multiple things and be really good at it. And sometimes those smaller jobs where you have to wear many different hats are going to help you get to that VP role at a bigger organization at some point.
That's a really good point. I worked with the vice president of the Indians, and he always told my staff what I thought was a funny story. He was working for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's where he started as an intern. And he said one day he was working, he was selling. They gave him a phone book and said start selling, so he did. And one day the game was coming up. The guy had the flu that ran the Jumbotron, their big Jumbotron at the time, and they're like, does anyone know how to use the equipment? And he said, nobody did, so I said, I do. And he said, they looked at him and said, oh my God, you're an intern. That is amazing. Would you be able to run it tomorrow? And he said, well, you got to give me the key now so I can get familiar with the equipment. And they said, absolutely. He spent the entire night, he was up all night reading the manual and practicing to figure out how to do it so that he could run it for the game. And I wouldn't recommend everybody do that, but it was a kind of humorous to me, but it showed, I'm going to try. I'm going to get out of my comfort zone, I'm going to try, I'm going to do what it takes to succeed. And he did, and he said it went off pretty well, a few minor glitches, but they were okay with it because they knew he was simply an intern filling in. But it got him a permanent job in a hurry. They wanted him aboard. Jeff, I was wondering, what should people be looking for? How can they stand out in all these applications, and how can they stay out of the no pile?
Well, that's a good question. I think I looked at that, when you asked me that, I was like, asked another way, what are employers looking for? You know, what are the hiring authorities looking for? And I think all these people can speak to that as well. I mean, I give advice for a living, so it's hard for me to like parse it and say there's like one thing, because I think like 100 things in my head. But I look back at my time at ASU, I did an intern. I didn't take positions where I could get experience. I made mistakes. I could give myself advice back in the day. I should have interned in the athletic department. I should have volunteered. There are plenty of road races out there that you could volunteer and make great contacts who can open doors for you. Again, it's not just are they going to hire you for their organization, but they know people. You know, if you do really good work, if you volunteer for things that are the less attractive stuff, you'll make your name known as someone who does good work, who's going to go above and beyond. You don't just stay in your lane and go, that's not my job responsibility. I'll do what I need to do. So it's the internships, the volunteering. Don't overdo it, meaning don't like do it for 2 or 3 years after you graduate. You have to value yourself. But while you're trying to separate yourself, how do you stand out? I was at ASU when Derek Hall was there. He's the president of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And I remember seeing him on stage at like the Interfraternity Council. They sent me because my fraternity didn't care about it. It's like, we'll send the freshman pledge. So I was going to sit in the back, just like, who am I? And I'm listening to Derek Hall on stage, and he was just commanding the room. And I thought, that guy has his crap together. And later, find out he's in sports too. But I think that by taking on those, just the different kinds of things you can do activity-wise, internships, you're going to stand out in your resume, because at the end of the day, your resume is like a storytelling document. Your resume doesn't get you a job, it gets you in the door. So how are you going to use that to separate yourself from, let's say there's 100 resumes that go in, they're not going to talk to 95 or whatever the number is. How are they going to talk to you? How do you stand out? So you've got to make sure that that's locked down and you have enough exposure to the right kind of experience. And then one other thing is that you'll find the hidden job market that way too. The hidden job market are the jobs that aren't posted out there. You want to be the person that gets hired because you're referred again by, say you intern in JV's group, and you said, that person's really good. I'm going to make sure that one of my peer group knows about them, either in the company or somewhere else. And you get introduced to something else because you did really good work there. Organizations don't want to post a job and get 1,000 resumes if they can say, you don't have to post that. We already know the candidate because they're working for us. Great. So you're already on the inside.
Anyone else?
I would just add as well, it's very easy right now with sort of social media and LinkedIn and all these other platforms to find out who the hiring manager is, or some individuals who you can reach out to learn more about the job. Like if you guys are just applying on Teamwork Online and just kind of crossing your fingers hoping for hoping to get a phone call back, then I think you're doing it incorrectly. It is so easy now to go on the website, LinkedIn, finding who actually this individual might be and learning more about the role from people who are actually doing it right now. It's just about being proactive and making sure that you're trying to find those individuals and kind of separating yourself from that. I have a great story of someone who I use this kind of a clear example about like how to stay out of the no pile and sort of step out. When I was in New York, I got someone, he clearly found me on LinkedIn, and he sent me his resume to the office, and it was actually of a baseball card, and he had taken a photo of himself with a Yankees hat, and he basically made a baseball card for himself, and it said, future inside sales rep for the New York Yankees, and he had his resume on the back of the baseball card. I don't care how good or bad that person was, he's getting a phone call from me. And I think it's just about what are you doing kind of and how you're being proactive. And I think for folks who are in kind of more the sales roles, like those are the types of people we're looking for. People who are kind of big go-getters, being active, what are you doing differently, how are you standing out. So I think anything and being engaged with kind of the potential sort of employer, I think is so much easier than it was, in a few previous years. So kind of going to Jeff's point, it's about storytelling. It's about how can you tell your story about what you're currently doing and how it relates to that job that you're applying for.
I guess, Kathy, what I would add is you guys all did such a fantastic job in terms of getting into college, remember what you did to get yourself into the colleges that you want to get into, right? You were signing up for different clubs. You were, finding out who family members knew from those various colleges. You got in front of them. You networked. You went to various meetings that where maybe some of their representatives were going to be in your area. You extended yourself out to make sure that you were in front of them and they knew your story. Very much the same thing. You just carry that over into real life, finding out who the contacts are that work for that company or that can get you in front of that organization, or that you're taking another internship, like Jeff said, or while you're in college, you're taking a job that happens to be calling up the alumni and asking them for dollars. You are basically setting up your skill set so that when you're in front of people, the decision makers, they're saying that, oh yeah, this person has extended themselves, they've gone above and beyond, and they are somebody that I want to have as my organization.
When I left the Indians and I was starting my own business, I left on a Friday. My kids thought of the name on a Saturday. On a Sunday, they came up with a logo and I ordered business cards. And Monday, I ordered 500 jigsaw puzzles, 5x7 jigsaw puzzles. And while the jigsaw puzzles were being shipped, I downloaded every picture of every arena, ice rink, baseball field I could find. And when they came, I sat and ironed them on these puzzles so that the puzzle was the picture. I took the puzzle apart. I kept one piece out. I overnighted the puzzle to the vice president of sales. Just overnighted it to them. The next day, I overnighted the missing piece, and I said, I'm your missing piece. I will help you fill your seats. And I had so many offers for marketing, which was not my goal, but I had so many offers for marketing because I stood out, because I got their attention. So how can you get people's attention without being, totally rude? But I love the idea of the baseball card. Those of you that are looking for positions in marketing, in PR, what is your PR statement? How can you come up in a really unusual way in PR to present yourself? What can you do differently to stand out? Just sending a resume, and as Jeff said, you can send, if you send a resume to Teamwork or to Work in Sports or to any of them, when you think about it, you're one of 500, 600 that may be applying. There's a lot of graduates. What makes you different? What makes you stand out? How should a cover letter introduce you? Do you even look at cover letters? How should they stand out?
I like them to be direct and kind of detail why they think they'd be a good fit for the position you're advertising. I don't like it if it comes in and it's pretty generic and it says, I'm looking for my next step in sports. Please consider me for your next position. And you can tell they just filled in the blank, and it's nothing that's, The other thing you look at is make sure you spell things right on the cover letter, which is shocking to me that people will have a cover letter that they've worked on for a long time and it's poorly written, or they didn't have somebody review it. We all see them. But that one it should take your resume to the next level. Like why that job you had working games at Wazoo fits with the Everett Aquasox. I think I'd be great in your ticket operations because when I was in Pullman, I did this. And then have something, and again, I like the gimmicky things to get people to look at your resume. I've seen people do things, and I hired somebody that sent us cookies once that were in the shape of our team logo, and we at least had to give her an interview, and we hired her, and she was fantastic. And now I think she works for the Philadelphia Phillies instead of the Phillies AAA team. But on the resume too is, have you done something while you're in college? A lot of you probably went to school and you're too busy with school to have a job, but you're involved in something. And even if it's involved in the Future Business Leaders Club. I hired a guy on the East Coast that had played baseball at Duquesne, but when I read his letter, he mentioned how he started selling advertising signs, billboards at the ballpark for Duquesne, and they'd never done that. And he said he started the program, they sold some signs, and it helped generate some money for the baseball program. So I gave him an interview, and it turns out he was great, and he worked out well. And that's what showed me he had the initiative to not afraid to I said, when I interviewed him, I said, "Had you ever sold anything before?" He said, "Well, stuff when I was a kid, door to door for school, but no." So he sold like 10 of those signs and helped raise, $5,000 for the baseball program, which was big when you don't have any money. And we ended up hiring him, and he's now a VP with a minor league team back in North Carolina, actually in my hometown. So he's done well, and that was 10 years ago. So have some substance on your resume, and sometimes a unique thing. If you were the mascot for the local Blimpie sub shop, that's kind of neat. It stands out.
To your point, Danny, I think that cover letters are like the connective tissue from what they're looking for to your skills. So the storytelling, I'm a big nonfiction storyteller. It should be consistent. The theme should be consistent from your cover letter to your resume, like the font, just anything that you're like, wow, these marketing materials for you are all real similar. But it's that connective tissue that gets someone to move on. It's like, well, what's your cover letter? I want you to read my resume. Resume, I want you to meet me. Right? These are all kind of compartmentalized stages of the process. That said, I don't really read cover letters. I scan them. If someone sends it, I'll scan it. But we see a lot of resumes in my business. So if something stands out negative, what you don't want to do is stand out negatively, but stand out positively. Like, wow, you've hit on the job and what your skill set is. That's going to, how you're going to do this job, and you've invited me now to move on to your resume.
Very good. Asking the right questions is important, and a lot of times you get into an interview and they ask you, do you have any questions? And you panic. What am I supposed to ask? So you start asking very generic questions. What are some good questions to ask that will help determine if they're the right fit for you?
I think one question that I probably get most frequently is what's the culture like? That's probably the one question that we get, and I kind of get the idea of why people ask that, but I think the wording of it is incorrect. If someone asked me what's the culture like, I could say anything that I wanted, and you would have absolutely no idea if I was telling the truth or if it was absolutely a lie. But I think maybe the question to ask is, what types of things do you guys do at company or professional team that really instill a great culture at your organization? So I like the question that the candidates ask about it. I just think they just ask it incorrectly. You guys should be asking us to give examples of how our culture is has grown or changed or making it a fun place to work. I would probably stay away from any financial one, especially on the first. I think that's what's the pay like, what's the commission like. I think those are more questions as you continue to go down the line of the interview process, maybe the second or third one. But I think for especially entry-level positions, it's tell me some stories about success. Tell me your success stories. Why is your program superior to maybe others that you may be applying for? And that's for us to show, hey, this is kind of what we've done for people who have come through our program. This is kind of where they are. So Jeff kind of mentioned sort of this tree. This is a very small industry, and everybody knows everybody. And so it's just making sure you guys are kind of showing, allowing us to show you success stories, so you can say, oh, you know what, this company actually has a background in developing people, and they're going off to great things, whether it be internally or externally. So I think the culture question and providing examples of success stories and where someone who has actually applied for this role, where are they now in 2, 5, or 10 years later down the road?
Can I ask you a question, JB?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I asked you, if I was a candidate, if I asked you about culture, and then I asked your boss or another peer manager, are you, in your organization, I think I know the answer to this, but are you confident that you guys would be aligned? Like that you're going to give similar answers about who you guys are and what your values are?
I would absolutely feel like it. Usually myself and other people are part of the process. We like to make sure candidates hear from all levels, whether it be our senior director, myself. We encourage them to reach out to individuals who are doing the job that they are applying for as well. And I just want to make sure that it's all honest. Good, bad, or indifferent, I think it's about just being honest. think everybody says they've got a great culture, but can they actually back up with stories that really solidify that?
I agree with him about his culture and the group of people there. I think they would be all in sync. But I think you'd be surprised at other organizations where they're not in sync. So when you walk in the door from the beginning, then when you start getting an email from an assistant or HR, how are they treating you? What's the culture like there? Then are they just selling you a bill of goods when you're there meeting with the manager because they really want to hire and get this position filled? You know, do you get 5 minutes with the VP or whatever the department head? Is that similar? So you're, as a candidate, you should be paying attention to all of these experiences because they later on you're going to go, I should have noticed that. You know, I noted there was an inconsistency that I just let slip someone in the job so much. Reality is, you can be more selective the longer you're in the industry, but you can be more tuned into it when you've paid attention to the different experiences you have with each person in the organization.
I'm big to ask also, I encourage people to ask, what is your growth process? How do you grow us? Because this is especially if it's your first job, you need to know how are they going to grow you. This is really important. It can make or break your career. So quite frankly, you want to make sure it's the right fit for you and the growth opportunity is there. How do they do it? Do you have coaching sessions? Do you do one-on-ones? How much do you train? Do you continually train me? Do you add on to my workload as we progress based on my ability to perform, or am I expected to do it within a certain amount of time? I mean, these are questions I think to me are valuable anyway. I don't know if you guys agree, but it's important.
I guess I would add, is I would want to find out what the average day would be like for me in the position that I'm looking for. And making sure that it's matching up with not only, what the job posting was, but also what I'm looking for. I mean, if they're telling me that, yeah, you're going to be at the ballpark from, 8 a.m. until 10 p.m., and I'm going to be cleaning down the chairs and doing all this type of work, when really I want to be in marketing, these things aren't matching up. So I would want to find that out. And I guess one question that I have always asked is there anything about my information that I've shared with you today, or anything about my resume that would prevent you from hiring me today? And the nice thing about this question is, while you're right there in front of them, it allows you to find out where you stand with that individual, that organization, because they're going to share with you, well, I've got an issue about X, or I've got an issue about Y, and then you can come back and say, well, the reasoning for this or the reasoning for that is this. And then they can actually hear that from you directly, face to face. And they kind of say, oh, well, that makes sense, and that seems to add up. Great, thank you so much. And now that's no longer an issue for them. Or maybe, that you can overcome that objection with that individual right then and there and nip it in the bud.
I think another good question to ask, it kind of shows if your employer is going to be invested in you, is what's been the success of your, say you apply for an internship, what's been the success of your interns? Where are they at now? If you get an answer back that says, I don't really know, do not work for them. They don't care about you. But hopefully they can say, yeah, I have a couple that are at Golden State, or I have one who's writing for the Charlotte Observer in Charlotte, North Carolina, or wherever, right? You want them to be able to, one, prove to you that their internship program that they have is generating successful employers in the business place, and two, that they actually care that they know where those people are. Because if they don't care, one, they just like you about their culture, and they're not in it for you. They're just looking to fill a position.
I'm going to ask a couple more, and then we're going to open it to you. There's one question that teams tend to ask, and everybody calls me afterwards, and they panic because they're like, what should I have said? Because if I say I have a weakness, that's going to look like I'm terrible. What do I say? Oftentimes you'll hear, what are your weaknesses? And how do you answer that?
First and foremost, be honest. That's number one. And then explain that you recognize that you have a weakness, and then what are you doing about that weakness to really make sure that you're improving on it? Because no one's perfect, and we don't, especially for entry-level positions, you might not have the exact kind of story to, or be given the opportunity to have the experience that kind of is a perfect fit for this job. But I think it's being self-aware. I think think that's kind of what we look for is, are you self-aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are? And can you tell a story of how you're going about kind of improving that weakness? And I think that's, we're in the business, especially in sales, we hear no a lot more than yes. So it's about how you're dealing with failures and how do you react to hearing no. So I think it's just explaining sort of that thought process, Kathy, of making sure that you are aware of it, and this is how I'm continuously developing myself as a person and trying to get that to become better at it.
I think that's great. I think that sometimes it's hard to find your weakness because you're like, well, what's okay to say? Well, the fact that I was always late to my first class in college, that's honest but terrible thing to say, right? So you can be too honest. But honesty is absolutely the right policy. But I think if you ask a reference, if you ask someone that you've reported to or that you trust, to really be honest with you and say, listen, I need this. Help me find my weakness. You'll hear things that you can then use. And two parts to that. One, I still remember a weakness that I was given when I was at Robert Half in front of a big room of people, like my boss's boss's boss. And the pressure was on to deliver numbers a quarter in, and the guy told me, as you go back to your office, I had a staff under me who said, don't squeeze it. And I love that you can use sports analogies in every industry, right? He said, don't grip the bat too tight. And I was like, okay. And he was telling me, don't, when it's intense, when things are really, kind of ninth inning, whatever, that you don't become unapproachable to your people, that you're not so intense that you lose your empathy. And it was really, I still remember that, I don't know, it was like 20 years ago, right? And so I could use that in interviews afterwards because I could articulate that. I would also recommend that once you find that you prime it, that you test it with people. So don't let the first time you ever tell your weakness, don't let it be in an interview. Don't say, hey, here's my weakness. And you're, well, that came out of my mouth a lot different than I thought it was going to come out, right? Make sure it comes out and you practice it with someone, friends, family, people that can give you feedback on it. But I think that finding your authentic kind of weakness, and then you might get tripped up because someone might say, give me your two. And I've heard people say, like, grab back one. I got to have two. So spend some time beforehand thinking about it.
Sounds very good. What are some of the common mistakes job seekers make when they're trying to get a job in sports? I think the elephant in the room is just go in and say, I just want to get my foot in the door. One thing I want to bring up is that each department is very specialized now in sports. Back in the day, back in the 1980s, when everybody started in sports through sales and then migrated to whatever area they wanted, that's not true anymore. It's rare, actually. You might find it in some of the minor league teams, but it's rare as a whole, because teams are looking, if you want to get in sales, they're looking for sales specific. You want to grow your career. They are investing in you. If you want marketing, they want marketing specific, and sometimes they want a lot of background before you even enter. So with that in mind, what are some of the mistakes people make when they're trying to get in?
Let me tell you something that someone did right just last week that I met with. So I had got this email from a former coworker of mine who now is director of marketing at Root Sports television network in town. She's like, hey, I met with this guy today, former baseball player at NC State. He's just moved back to Seattle, looking to get the marketing info interview with him today. Would you mind if I pass this info on to you when you met with them? Usually it's going to be a yes. So met with him last week, and then I then passed his info. He's like, hey, can you connect me with other people? So then I connected him with two other people at the University of Washington, the CMO, Brian Boucher, Director of Marketing, Rachel Doyle. Now he's meeting with them next week. And he just did it right. He's very just like sincere, and then now met with one person, and that whole network that's in Seattle, everyone knows everybody. This guy probably will land a job soon because he's just going in, he's asking the right questions, getting info on what people are looking for in specific markets, specific jobs, what internships do you have coming up, when do those go live, all of that stuff. So, but now he's just developed his network in the matter of 3 weeks. Almost every sports exec in the Seattle market, just by requesting an info interview.
I'll add, biggest mistake is that the college seniors start too late in that process. I would say the best time to network is when you don't actually need a job right at that second. And to be able to kind of get to know and get to know your network and to start sort of establishing yourself as a brand before that job opportunity comes up. I think just students tend to just wait until the April, May time, and they start freaking out and thinking, oh geez, I'm trying to get into sports, and I graduated in May and I'm looking for that internship or job in June. You have to start early. You have to get ahead of the game. A lot of the folks who we talk to about coming on board for our Rapid Sales Academy, we have known for over like a year plus, and we've kind of walked them through and got to know them as people first. And it goes back to sort of why you go work for people, not logos, is because you're finding people who are invested in your career. So I would say, how many people are seniors right now? Okay, but mostly out of sports or younger. So,
I'm a doctorate student.
Doctorate student, okay. Awesome. So like the fact that you guys are here today is a fantastic example of you guys continuously trying to break into this industry. And so it's about starting early and not just leaving at the very end to when you graduate or when you're ready for that job move.
Yeah. Kathy, I think I agree with that. You're real point. You work for the Yankees. People overvalue wins and losses, and they overvalue it's the Sports Center effect. I don't know what people are watching for highlights anymore, but the Sports Center effect was they were on Sports Center every night, so I paid attention to these teams. And we worked a long time ago. We worked with the Atlanta Hawks on something. At the time, the Hawks were terrible. They were terrible at the time, but they had Brendan Donahue and they had a great group of people. And I couldn't tell people fast enough, this is a great place to go work. Bill, you see this all the time with companies you work with. People that went there, oh, by the way, one of them's now president of Sporting Kansas City, or CEO, he might have just got promoted. Jake, who's you guys know really well because of, everybody's connected in the industry.
Jake, what about that?
Yeah, so Jake was down there working in inside sales. He went to, actually at the time, I think he went to the Hornets. But Brendan had moved over from the Hornets to the Hawks. So it's the leadership, it's the people, kind of logos conversation. The teams were terrible. The wins and loss records were terrible. Everybody wanted to work for the Yankees because of the prominence, but that's not an end-all be-all. That's a really tough place to work. If you can prove it somewhere where they're underperforming as a team, and there's been Indians people over the years that have been, the team was terrible, but people could sell tickets or they could really move the needle. You're moving the needle in a way that you couldn't do with the Golden State Warriors right now. I'd like to have the rings, but working for the Golden State Warriors right now? Really? I love the market, it's really expensive, but if you work there, how are you developing? There's people that have great jobs there, but you looked at one guy just left for to run the Marlins, as the president. He left the Warriors to run them off. Well, why? And there's great reasons for doing something like that, but I think it's the people, it's understanding that it's not wins and losses, it's understanding that you could go to El Paso. I love the teams in El Paso. We've done a number of searches in El Paso. El Paso's not exactly people's first destination when I say where do you want to move to, but people that want to sacrifice and work in the industry can get great tutelage, get great training, and guess what? They don't have to be there for the rest of their career. Maybe they could be, but they're going to get promoted and take on bigger jobs somewhere else based on their performance there.
Kathy, I guess I would add is, have you done your homework about the organization you're applying for? So often I'll ask somebody, it's like, so I work for the Wall Wall Sweets baseball team. I'll ask them, why the Sweets? Why do you want to be a part of the organization? And a lot of people are like, I just want to work in sports. Really? That's your answer? So what can you tell me about the Sweets? What do you like about Walla Walla? And this is me not only trying to get to know you as an individual about why we should bring you on, but what homework have you done about the team? What can you tell me about the organization? And not just the fact that we're, a collegiate baseball team, working in the area, but, what can you tell me about our ownership? What can you maybe tell me about me that, you went out and dug up? And just, that shows the fact that you're taking an initiative to find out more about the organization that you're applying for. And not only that, but, hey, I saw that you guys are doing X, and that's really interesting. Like, the team started doing live streams from their home games. Like, I've got real interest. I used to do videography, when I was a kid. I've got a real passion for that, and I've done some of that when I've been in college. That's fantastic. You know, it gives you more things than maybe what you're applying for. But doing your homework is huge for the person you're applying for.
So I'd like to open it up because we have about 10 minutes left with some of your questions. Yes.
Hi, I'm Timmy Foster, and as I mentioned, I'm a doctoral student at Northeastern University in organizational sports leadership. I, first of all, want to congratulate Kenny for, of course, the champion Seattle Storm, right? And I'm a special sports Storm advocate. I just recently had the opportunity during the Women of Inspiration night to launch my own project in conjunction with them. It sold out 7 suites, so I was really excited about that. But my question is really around my dissertation. It's looking at organizations that are partnering with athletes to address social justice issues. And so I know some of the Women on the Storms are dealing with the homeless issues, but can other people talk about maybe some ways that your organization or your company is working or partnering with the athletes to address some of the social justice issues in our communities?
Deep question.
Good question.
I have cards too.
I'll start, just to some of this work we do with our athletes at the Storm. So we have 3 women on our team who just are really passionate about doing multiple things in the community and really pushing issues, especially social issues, forward. Brianna Stewart, this year being our most notable, she won 3 MVPs in 35 days. But her big thing, she wrote the Players Tribune article on her Me Too story and all that, and has done a ton of work since then with the organization RAIN and then a couple organizations for sexual abuse. But we just give them a platform and then they take advantage of it. And we mostly are just there to support them and what they want to do. So Brianna Stewart came to us and was like, hey, I want to do this night to raise awareness. And we're like, yes, of course, how can we support you doing this? And we're all, all about it. And the Storm is unique, I think, also in that aspect, where we have such a broader touch point with our fans in the WNBA, where you get that access to our players one-on-one that you might not get in larger professional sport. Our athletes are real, they're human, and they're willing to tell their story in a very unique and powerful way that I think really brings people in. And then also this year we had a really impactful breast health awareness campaign where each one of our players met with a cancer survivor. And then we videoed that, but then we had this artist come in and she created these shoes based off of the story that was shared with our players. And put those out there. Holly Rowe was one of the people we interviewed, and she was interviewed by Brianna Stewart. Just very impactful content that really touches the lives of people in real time. And we shared those, of course, on digital in arena. And our players wore the shoes on the game night, and then we're actually out to support that cause. So, pretty impactful.
In minor league baseball, we briefly have our players for the season, and then they're moved on, and it's kind of transient. But we have had we had a success this last year with a guy that played at the University of Washington and played in Everett with us, started his career with the Mariners. He's now in AA baseball, and his mother developed early onset Alzheimer's, and he started a foundation called For Mom, and he writes out on his arm every day. And he it's just raising awareness of that situation. His mother's in her early 50s, and it's a devastating thing for him to deal with. But he started this foundation, and actually he was injured this year, so we got in touch with the Mariners and got in touch with him, and we were giving away a bobblehead at our game of this person I'm talking about, Braden Bishop, and we actually flew him back in, and he met with the crowd and talked to them about his cause, and we actually had people just come down on the concourse and he signed autographs and just met everybody individually, and in like an hour time, we got over $2,000 in just donations that people said, hey, we want to give money to this charity. So, I mean, that's a small thing we were able to do there. It's not something where, I've got 10 players going out in the community helping the homeless, because I don't have players at this point of the year. So we did that during the summer, that worked well for us.
We have about 2 minutes left. Is there another question? We've been that good.
Thank you so much. And again, thanks to the Seattle Storm. As I said, I was able to work in conjunction with the Seattle Storm's Women of Inspiration and also for the breast cancer night. So just really, really admiring of the work that you all are doing. Erica is responsible for pulling me in. And so thank you so much. And thank you for everything that you all have shared. It's been very insightful.
Are you in Boston?
I'm in Seattle.
Okay. You said Northeastern, right?
Yeah, Northeastern is, our headline campus is in Boston, but we have a satellite in Seattle,
Oh, wow.
in Silicon Valley, and in England.
If you're Northeastern anymore, Northwest.
I like the Silicon Valley thing.
Just depends on where you're standing.
So any other questions? Okay, so are we all ready to figure out how we're going to start our career in sports now?
Yes.
Does everybody have a plan? Are you starting a plan? Does it make sense? How many of you are nervous because you haven't really prepared as well as you thought you did? Okay, so look forward to it. Please feel free to touch base with any of our speakers. Any help you need, we're here throughout the 2 days to help you. So we're here for you, okay? Very good, thank you.